Welcome to the show, and with me is Susy Flory. She is an author and a co-author of 5 books, with her latest release that will be coming out on May 1st of this year. And I think you're going to really like what she has to say. She has written some amazing books, and one of them is actually reached the New York Times bestseller list. Susy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here with us. And just tell me a little bit about yourself before we get into some of your books and those amazing stories.
Oh, well, I'm a cowgirl. My father's from Texas. I grew up on horses. I was on the back of a horse from the age of about 3 or 4 years old. And I think that gave me a little bit of courage to do some different kinds of adventurous things in my life. And I've been an English teacher, a reporter, a wife and mom, and now a writer.
Wow, you've done it all. Now, I read something somewhere that you've actually done full-time writing since 2004. Mm-hmm. What made you choose to go full-time into this?
I've always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a child, I love books. I love to read books. I feel like books are my first language. And I always had this desire inside to be a writer. I never had the courage. And finally, a few years ago, I just felt God calling me. I felt like it was something that I needed to do. I went to a writer's conference and got some interest there, and then I came home and I just said to my husband, I don't think I can do this. And he said, yes, you can. And he has supported me.
Wow, because, you know, it's amazing. Now you are writing, you write different kind of books and some interesting ones, as we'll get back to later. But tell me a little bit about your life with God. How did that come about? What happened?
I was raised in the church. My parents both loved the Lord, and we went to a little church in the Bay Area. I grew up in that church, and when I was 5 years old, I remember clearly feeling that I wanted to be part of the family of God, and I wanted to make it official. And in my church, we would walk up that main aisle. I did that at 5 years old. The pastor leaned down. I told him, you know, I want to give my life to Jesus. And he honored that. And then at the end of that service, everyone in the church came up and shook my hand and welcomed me. And then I was baptized the next week. And I just have always loved the Lord. And I've not always walked with him perfectly, but I love him.
Love him. Wow. Yeah. Now, you said not always have been perfectly with him. What kind of changed that? What happened that you became really aware of that?
I always was a little bit of a lone ranger. I was a person who felt like I could do things on my own and that I didn't need a lot of help. And I hate to even admit it, but I think it was a little bit arrogant. And I like to correct people. You know? My husband doesn't always appreciate that, but I'll correct his grammar at times.
And you're talking to me right now. That's just trouble with the accent.
I'm a recovering know-it-all. And then about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And the scary thing about it is that my father died at the age of 47 of cancer. And so he was diagnosed about 45, which was about the age that I was. And so I just said, God, what are you doing? You know, I don't have time for this. This is crazy. This is not fair. I just had a fight with him. You know, I just told him he was crazy. And I was really afraid that I was going to die at the same age that my father did of cancer. I felt like it was a curse or something. God brought me through that after surgeries, chemo, radiation. And I came out of it a much nicer person, and a person who knew that I needed other people and that I needed God, and I couldn't do it on my own.
Wow, I am trying to envision that, because you know, I've never had cancer. But do you get afraid, you know, that you, like you said, you're going to die, you know, and the treatments, you get really sick. There must be a lot that happens. Give me a specific way that God really, really touched you during that time. One of those moments that you're like, whatever.
Well, right before I was diagnosed, just a few months before, I had a book come out. And it was called So Long Status Quo, What I Learned from the Women Who Changed the World. And I wrote about 9 powerful women like Mother Teresa, Harriet Tubman, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the things that they had done to change the world. And I was trying to inspire other people. And so my sister-in-law said to me, you've written about strong women, and now you have to be one.
Ouch.
But what I realized was that I could not be a strong woman on my own. And so just having God there with me in those dark moments, I was afraid I was going to die and leave my children without a mother, that I was going to die prematurely. And finally, I came to the realization that my life is in God's hands. And none of us know the date we're going to be born or the date we're going to die. That's up to the Lord. And so I just had to release that to him. I just had to physically, emotionally, intellectually make that choice that my life is yours, whether I have 1 more hour or 1,000 more hours.
Oh, and once you did that, was it like a load fell off your shoulders?
Yeah.
How did that impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. I realized that he's in control of my life, and that I cannot plan things down to the detail because you don't know the things that are going to happen to you. And so I just felt a renewed sense of his leading, that I wanted to follow him and not my own plan.
Now, if somebody would be struggling right now with cancer or just found out, what kind of advice would you like to give them for that?
I guess one of the things I learned is that bad things happen whether you follow the Lord or not. Bad things happen to everyone. And I would much rather face cancer with God on my side and guiding me and sustaining me than to face it alone. So you don't have to go it alone. Yeah,
and then this is, you know, that might even be for you right now too. If you're facing cancer right now or dealing with something really hard in your life, I really encourage you, contact us. We'd love to pray with you. You know, we even could give you Susy's information later too if you want to connect with her. Our toll-free number is 855-836-1100. God doesn't want you to face it alone. He wants to help you and guide you just like he did with Susy. And I want to tell you, you know, you might say, God, why? Why is this happening to me right now? And like Susy said, it's not a matter of why or how, but that God's going to work that through you. And he might have a bigger plan for you as well, like he did with Susy. She said she used to be arrogant, which kind of surprised me, but that it had a really good impact on her. And, you know, I'm just listening to you. And you know what I really like about you? You're real. You're just flat out real. And I want to say thank you for just being you. But you know, once you went through the cancer, a several years ordeal, you pass it, the fear is gone that hunted you probably all your lives, and then you really get into the writing. And then, so share me a little bit about your second book. What is that all about?
Well, I came out of the cancer ordeal feeling a sense of time pressure. You know, realizing I'm not going to live forever and I need to get busy with what God wants me to do. And so I was able to say no to some things that were distracting me or, you know, keeping me from my primary purpose, which I began to see as writing and speaking, you know, these messages that God had for me, or helping other people to be able to write and collaborating with them. And so I was writing a dog book called Dog Tales, and it was 17 true dog stories. Amazing things that dogs had done to help people or save people, and just had a lot of fun writing that. And in the process, I met a man named Michael Hinkson, and he was in the World Trade Center on September 11th on the 78th floor. And the interesting thing about him is that he's completely blind. He's blind from birth, and he has a guide dog, or had a guide dog named Roselle, and she rescued him from the tower. And they just had this amazing adventure that day. God spoke to him. All of these things happened to him. And as he was telling me this story that I was going to put in Dog Tales, towards the end of that conversation, I just said, Michael, have you ever thought about writing a book? And he said, yeah, but I need somebody to help me. And so I raised my hand and said, you know, I'd love to do it. And that's kind of how that came about.
Wow, it just all fell into place from one thing to another. Now, I started reading your book. It is actually really good. And you kind of got me right from the beginning, how Michael's day starts. And you even put some of the time frames in from Thunderdog right here and really connected about it. Tell me a little bit, what did you experience when you went through this book? How did it touch you personally when you were writing it?
One of the most inspiring things about Michael is that he is fearless. He will do anything. He has driven a car. He's
blind?
He's flown and landed a plane. He has a master's in physics. If you can imagine doing high-level calculus and algebra and physics without being able to see. And he is just absolutely fearless. So he inspired me because he has a major disability, but he sees it as an advantage. And so that kind of helped me coming out of breast cancer to think, well, what have I learned? How can God use this in my life as an advantage rather than some horrible tragedy that happened to me? And so just his attitude really helped me. And then the minute that plane hit above him, 15 floors above his floor, he began to pray, you know, and he just said he was talking to God that whole day, asking God to guide him, keep him safe, show him what to do. And so from that first moment, he just was following the Lord. And when he finally made it out of the tower, it took him an hour, he and Roselle. They went down 1,463 stairs. They met the firefighters coming up. Oh. Yeah, a very powerful moment where his dog interacted with the firefighters, and they would pet her and she'd kiss them, and you know, then they continued up to the upper floors. When he finally made it out of the tower, he was 100 yards away when the second tower fell, the tower next to his. And luckily the tower, as it fell away from him and Roselle, but they began to run, and he cried out to the Lord and he said, how could you get me out of the tower only to have it fall on us? He was, you know, upset and anguished and angry, and immediately he felt the Lord speak to him in his heart and just give him peace. And God said, don't worry about what you cannot control. Just focus on running with Roselle, and I'll take care of the rest.
Wow.
And I just have taken that lesson, that moment when God spoke to him, as, you know, first of all, I think it's funny that God knew Roselle's name. God knew this dog, and God used this dog to save him and to help him that day. And secondly, that we can't control the things that happen around us, but God will be with you in the middle of it. So he was in this dust cloud, 100-foot tall dust and debris cloud that came out of the tower collapse. And this dog, Roselle, this 70-pound, beautiful lab, guided him through the dust cloud. She couldn't see or smell, but somehow she guided him into a subway station and saved his life again.
Wow. Why don't we go take a look at that right now?
I'm Michael Hinkson, and I'm here to introduce you to my new book, Thunderdog, which is a book about teamwork, trust, and my guide dog and I surviving the terrorist attacks on 9/11. I have a question. What would you do tomorrow if you woke up and discovered that you were blind? You couldn't see anything around you. How would you shop? How would you work? How would you do anything that you normally would do? I suspect that most of you, because you have eyesight, would think that your life would be over. In fact, what Thunderdog is in part about is to tell you that just because a person is blind, it doesn't mean that we can't live, love, and do the same things that everyone else does. The handicap that I face is not that I do not have eyesight. The handicap I face comes from the attitude of people who think that blindness is the end of the world.
Michael Hinkson is a man whose character and faith were refined by the fires of September 11th. Michael was on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center with his guide dog, and it wasn't so much his escape from the tower itself, but what happened to him outside the tower that surprised me and intrigued me. And when I got the chance to work with him and to use my pen to help bring Thunderdog to life, I was very excited. I love adventure stories, and Michael Hinkson's story is an amazing adventure, but it's also a powerful story of trust and teamwork. And I learned so much partnering with Mike on this book, and we trusted each other and worked together to, I hope, produce a story that will inspire you, encourage you, and challenge you to do things that you've never done before.
This is a book about the human-animal bond and the trust and the faith that we have that helped me to live another day after terrorists attacked my building, the World Trade Center. I was on the 78th floor of Tower 1. I got down the stairs, I got out of the building, and I was able to run away as Tower 2 was collapsing less than 100 yards from where I was. I hope that you'll enjoy the book. I hope that you'll tell your friends about it, and that you'll be inspired in the way that I'm inspired to tell the story, and that you'll go away with a different attitude about how to deal with change in your own life, and certainly a different attitude about how to view people who happen to be blind.
Welcome back to the show, and with me Susy Flory, who has written the book Thunderdog, and it's the book you just saw a clip about. Now, isn't it amazing to see Michael and to see how he's blind? And yet, I just heard from Susy that it took a full hour to get down all the way into that dust cloud to say, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. God, help me. Now you shared about about the book and about Thunderdog. You know, did you actually get to meet Michael in person? Did you connect? How did all that work for you helping him to write the book?
Yeah, actually, I went to his house over the course of a summer. And again, this was the summer after breast cancer. So it just was, you know, life affirming to be with him, to be with his wife. He has a wonderful wife named Karen, who's a paraplegic. She's in a wheelchair. She's been paralyzed since she was born. They have an amazing marriage, and they had 3 big lab dogs. And so every time I would come to interview Mike, the dogs would run and jump on me. And, you know, I just got to be part of their family over that summer. And so I met with him and just asked him questions, talked to him, and wrote the book after that.
Wow. That's so exciting. That's just now, what I noticed in the end of the book, it actually talks about some things that we should not say to blind people or do. Can you tell me a couple of those?
Yeah, I've been with Michael in restaurants, and people speak to me, but not to Michael directly. So there's nothing wrong with his ears, and he's probably 3 times as smart as I am, but yet people assume because they can tell that he's blind that he needs help and that I have to speak for him. And so I think we need to be careful that we don't treat people with disabilities as lesser, weaker, less, you know, capable, less smart. I've also seen the same thing in airports.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I've never noticed this because I never focused on it before. So are there some other things that so I just should go right up to him and say, hi, I'm Barb. And he's like, oh my.
Yeah, you have to announce yourself, grab their hand, or, you know, you grab them and give them a hug.
Yeah.
Tell them who you are.
Yeah.
One thing I did learn that's very important is you never pet a guide dog in harness, because they're working and you don't want to distract them because, you know, they can save their owner's life. They need to be alert and working. And so you need to ask permission. And if you want to pet the dog, they will take the harness off the dog and then you can pet them. But once they're in that harness, they're working and they take it very seriously. The dogs do.
So I never would have thought about that.
Yeah.
So how long does it take usually to train a guide dog?
They have a puppy raiser. They go from Guide Dogs for the Blind into a family that takes them for about a year, and they raise them, and they don't necessarily train them, but they teach them really good manners. And there's certain things they can't do. They don't let them swim, and they don't let them chase other animals or chase balls or play fetch, because when they are working as a guide dog, they don't want them distracted by doing those things. So there's certain manners they teach them. When they're about a year old, they go back to Guide Dogs for the Blind for training, and I believe that takes between 4 to 6 months. Once they're finished, the dog is worth between $50,000 and $100,000 because of all the training that's gone into it.
I had no idea.
But Guide Dogs is a nonprofit, and they provide these dogs free to blind people. And so they're completely free along with the training and follow-up. So it's a wonderful ministry that they are doing.
Wow. And then Roselle was, of course, the guide dog for Michael.
Yes.
Now, what happened to Roselle? Because she's no longer around, if I
Right.
understand.
She worked with Mike until she was about 8 years old. She traveled all over the world with him as he told his story. She won all kinds of awards. She was the hero dog last year for the American Humane Association. Hero Dog of the Year. She passed away at the age of 13, which is a pretty good age for a dog, but she did have some autoimmune problems from breathing in that dust and debris on September 11th. There was a lot of toxic things, and so we know firefighters and other first responders have had some problems as well. So he had to retire her at the age of 8. So from 8 to 13, she just lived a happy life.
She was retired.
She was retired and had lots of love and attention.
That sounds pretty good. Well, you've written another book, but before we do that, we will be right back.
Hi, we want to help you to learn to love your life. Watch the show, start reading your Bible, pray for yourself and your loved ones. Get to know us on the website, call us, we'll pray with you. It works. Keep watching and love your life.
I'm just so excited to be able to share with you that God has a plan for you. He wants you to love your life and to live it abundantly. And that's what my passion is for you. I want you to love your life, to enjoy your life, and to see the benefits that God has for you in mind. doesn't just want to leave you where you're at, but He wants to make a difference. And that is what Love Your Life Ministries is all about, to help you grow and draw closer to God, for you to have a great life that totally focuses on what God wants for you. And guess what happens when you do? Your life will change, not for the worse, but for the better. It is going to be a blast. Welcome back to the show, and with me Susy Flory, who wrote the best New York Times bestseller, Thunderdog, and has a brand new book coming out this May. You have this book coming out, Heaven Hears. What is it about, and why did you start it?
It's actually a book with a celebrity family. I had never worked with, someone famous before, but it's the Pat Boone family. And Pat was a superstar singer and actor. I think his heyday was in the 50s. He was kind of like the, wholesome version of Elvis Presley during that time. He had a bunch of #1 hits, and he had a family with 4 girls. And his girls traveled around with him, kind of like the Osmond family, and they performed as a family, very musical. Well, the second daughter was named Lindy. Third daughter was named Debbie. She's the one who has a singing career. She had a big hit called You Light Up My Life.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That was the first song, actually. I came into the United States with my first movie, and it just says, You Light Up My Life. I loved it.
So the second daughter, Lindy, kind of became a housewife and a mother, and she didn't, go into show business. And then she had children, 2 children, or actually 3 children. Her oldest son is Pat Boone's first grandson. So he was, kind of very much loved and kind of the center of the family. And when he was 24 years old, he fell through the skylight of his apartment building in LA. He fell 4 floors, hit this concrete floor, and almost died, and just was very horribly injured. Rushed him to the hospital, and they weren't sure if he was going to make it. And so the family immediately gathered. They have a very strong faith. They prayed for him. And it turns out that Pat Boone and Larry King were very good friends, and they had known each other since their 20s, when Larry was a radio show host. And so Larry called up Pat Boone and said, Pat, I want you to come on my show, and we are going to pray for your grandson. We're going to get the world to pray. So they did that. His mother, Lindy, went on as well, the one I wrote the book with. And they ended up being on the show 5 times. And by the 5th time, this boy, whose name is Ryan, came on the show. And so he progressed. And during that time, they had the chance to share their faith with an international audience of millions of people. And they got tremendous response. Pat shared the gospel every time he was on. And so it was just an amazing, amazing opportunity to show God at work, to show that famous people have difficulties too and tragedies, but to show that God answers prayer. Maybe not as quick as we would like or how we would like. They would have liked it if he would have, recovered instantly. The fact is he's still recovering though, and this is 12 years later, he's still recovering. And, God is good. God has been faithful, and they have learned to rely and trust God.
Wow. And so the whole story is actually in the book.
The story is in the book.
That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
So what were some insights that you really got out of the book when you wrote it? Because I learned so much when I write, and I just get so excited. And then you have this much information, and you put in this much. So,
I guess one of the things I learned is that, tragedy has ripples. When a tragedy happens, it hurts other people, it affects other people in your family, community. She had, situations that happened with her other children and with her husband. And so it wasn't just Ryan that was hurt, but everyone was hurt by what happened. But on the other side of the coin, as God was working and they were learning how to trust him and how to grow together as a family, and how to learn from something like this, that also had ripples. And so what they were learning as their faith was growing, the wisdom that they were gaining also reaches out to other people. And even in this book, this is what she wants to share, is what God has taught her and how he's sustained her and how his word and his message has gone out through a tragedy. Millions of people have heard about God.
It's amazing just listening to you. You're talking about Michael's story, and you're talking about your new book coming out. And they almost have the same similar message. God is there, God's pulling you through, and He's going to use it to help other people. Susy, you have touched my heart by coming today. Thank you so much for sharing what you did. I just really am looking forward to read your books, especially the second one, or the fifth one coming out now. I want to say thank you. I want to give you my book, Ransomed.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Great to have you. And you know, you might really want to know a little more actually about Susy, where you can get a hold of her. So Susy, where can people get more information about you or about your books?
You can find me on Facebook, Goodreads, Twitter, but probably the easiest way is my website, susyflory.com, and I'd love to hear from viewers.
Yeah, great. So you heard it. Look at the screen below right now and you can see exactly where you need to get a hold of Susy if you'd like to connect with her. Or maybe there's a special book in you that you want to share with her or information about that. Anyway, just wanted to let you know, there are people that are hurting out there and there are things that have happened in lives. And as you listen to Susy, as I did, with both those stories that she was sharing about Pat Boone's family and about Michael Hungston, and you just start to see how much God actually used the negative and made it positives in a much bigger circle. So if that's you right now, just know you're not alone. Know there's hope for you, and know that God has a much bigger plan for you than you even ever could imagine. You might say, I don't know that God. I want to get to know Him. I encourage you, call us, 855-836-1100. We would love to help you with that. Or go to our website, BarbTV.org. God loves you, and I know that He wants to touch your life as much as He's touched Susy's life with her experience, even with breast cancer, or my life, in the way He has taught me so many things through so many trials, with and without. Just know you're not alone. Have a great day.
Lost in the miry clay, no hope that I could see, but you answer when I call your name. You came to my defense, ran to my rescue, and you turn mourning to dancing again. You are the lifter of my head. Jesus, where would I be without you? Lost in this world till I found you. You are the lifter of my head. Jesus, save me from